Alan, what's the smart approach to do some of the analysis that Curtis just talked about from a data standpoint, which is how are we going to use this? What's it going to cost us? What's the return going to be? How's it going to help us?
I guess the easiest thing to say is working backwards, right? Where is this piece of content playing? What are we making this piece of content for? Where is it going to be seen? So where publishing comes last, because that's where you put your ad live or put your content live, you need to know where that's going to be. If it's Facebook exclusive, if it's Instagram and Facebook both, is it, hopefully YouTube? Do you need to change anything for the various platforms? So I think when you make your planning and do your pre-production work, you really have to have an idea of the publishing and where it's going for that process. So understanding the publishing, working backwards. Now you're pre-planning and you've hopefully made a good plan, and then you throw the dice.
Welcome to Bullhorns Bullseyes, the podcast where precision meets promotion. I'm Tom Nixon.
And I'm Curtis Hayes.
We're thrilled to have you join us as we discuss the ever-evolving world of sales and marketing. Every week, Curtis and I bring our own specific experiences and expertise, along with a special guest who has stories to tell and lessons learned to share. We're here to help you with strategies that hit the mark and amplify the marketing. Before we kick off today's episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. And if you find our discussions on target, leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us. Now get ready for insights, tips, and conversations that will up your marketing game. It's Bullhorns and Bullseyes with Curtis Hayes and Tom Nixon. Let's ride. Curtis, we are back with another episode of Bullhorns and Bullseyes. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you? Back from vacation, I see.
Can you see how tan I am on the video?
Very tan.
I'm showing my...
Did you get sun down there in Florida?
We got nothing but sun, but I'm nothing but Irish and English, so I don't get it. And when I do, I turn pink. And I've got a scar here to show that I have had cancerous cells removed. So I'm just going to stay, white as a ghost the rest of my life. And I'm fine with that.
Did you take your cowboy hat down there then? Because if you wore the cowboy hat, you would not get the sunburn on the forehead.
It's right there. It's waiting for me. Yes, it went down with me. So I had a rootin' tootin' good time, which we're going to do today as well. The third person you see in the video, if you're watching, is the man behind the curtain. And if you're listening via podcast, we will soon introduce and you will hear his voice because he is not only a good friend of the podcast, he is the video producer for Bullhorns and Bullseyes. And let's welcome him to the show, Alan Borman. Alan, thank you for being on this side of the camera for a change.
Thanks, Tom. It is very uncomfortable for me, but I'm going to get through it. And since you're so willing to share so much personal information about yourself, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable here.
Absolutely. Well, tell people who don't know anything more than what I just told them about your background and what you do professionally.
Sure. So I'm a producer. So I like to kind of sum it up in a simple way to say I'm a connector of people, creative, developers, business management, everything and anything that's marketing or advertising. I'm kind of the surge protector for your important projects, right? I know where everything's going. I know where everything is. And I'm kind of hoping to keep everything at an even level. So when big things kind of surge, there's consistency throughout your, expensive project, because usually those are the ones that need the kick gloves.
Absolutely. So, Curtis, thank you for introducing me to Alan. I've used you primarily as a video producer. You may do myriad other things, I'm sure, but we're going to focus a lot of today's conversation around the concept of video. But Curtis, as we've spoken about, we're going to talk about consistency. We're going to talk about strategy. And so a lot of this applies to whether you're talking about a podcast, an article, a website, speaking engagements, or video, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And Alan's a great person to talk about for that. So Alan and I met close to 10 years ago. Actually, we had our kids in T-ball together, and Alan and I were both coaches. And we had some similar friends. And so that's kind of how we got connected through those friends. And then with the type of business Alan does and the type of stuff that I was doing then at Kaleidoscope, we started collaborating on projects together and have been working together ever since. And so when we came up with this idea for the podcast and wanted to do video, he was the first person I turned to say, hey, you know, what could we do with this? How could we improve our production value on video? How could we make this, you know, sort of work on YouTube? How could we improve the quality and, you know, the editing and speed to editing and all those different types of things? So Alan's definitely been collaborating with us on the back end as we've been going through this project. And he also sent us a really nice surprise. I'm going to tell a quick story. Back in Christmas time, as all these presents were arriving, I'm ordering on Amazon for my wife and kids. My wife's ordering for me and the kids and other people. And all these packages are coming to the house. And I get these strange packages delivered. And here's this box. I look at it. I open it up. It says it's a megaphone. And I'm like, who ordered a megaphone? And there was no like gift receipt or anything. I was like, what is this? And then
Looks
the
like a
next day,
bullhorn to
another
me.
box comes. And it's this awesome dartboard.
Yeah.
And I could not put it together. And so we put these things up on the shelf and we were going to try and return them to Amazon. And then I'm talking to Alan like almost a month later. And he goes, hey, did you get any packages delivered to your house? And I mean, instantly it clicked. You son of a gun. You're the one that sent the Bullhorn and Bullseyes. So Tom, I do need to get the bullhorn over to you because that belongs over on your desk, and then I've got a white space on the wall here. I need to put the dartboard up on. So appreciate that, Alan. It was a very thoughtful gift.
As we build the podcast, I figured you could build the environment that you do it in.
Yep. No, it's perfect. Well, next thing you know, I'll be riding in on a horse. You know, as you just
We can make that happen, Curtis. We can do that.
Full immersive.
Yeah, we can do it.
Well, Alan, let's talk, if you don't mind. I wanted to ask you where, just sort of a high level question about video, because you've been in the industry for a while. I'm sure you've seen the evolution of video from its beginnings in the marketing sort of toolbox. Where is, in your opinion, marketing in the ecosystem of content marketing in the year 2024, and where's it going forward?
So I have no statistics to back my statements up. I just think a lot of things, and I know Curtis does have the statistics to back this up. But let's be honest, video is very important right now. People don't want to read. The human brain's wired as such to be able to watch content, retain the content better than somebody's able to read and retain that information. So content and video, catchy things that stay within people's brain, is more important today than it was yesterday. And each day forward, it will become more and more important and more integrated into our lives.
Yeah, so from a data perspective, I looked up some stats earlier. It looks like the average U.S. person is spending just shy of 50 minutes per day on YouTube. And what I've heard is that the average session, though, on YouTube, so when a user opens up YouTube, the amount of time they spend during that one stint is at around 19 minutes. So just shy of 20. So you figure two and a half of those times per day that somebody's on YouTube, the majority of which are happening on mobile phones, though we have mobile phones, we're watching YouTube on our desktop, and then we also have a generation of people who are, let's call it, cutting the cord from cable, and we've got YouTube on our smart TVs, and they're streaming content. There was bad storms going through Illinois last night. We watched our favorite streamer, Ryan Hall, y'all. I'll give a plug to Ryan Hall. Great streamer on YouTube if you're into weather. And we watched these storms for 2 hours go across Illinois, streaming from YouTube on our TV. It was great. So, if you compare that statistic to how much time people spend on a website, which you're lucky if you get 60 seconds for a user session on your website, I mean, it's just drastically different. So I think that, leads right to your point there, Alan, that consumers today are consuming more video content than they are necessarily reading, at least from a digital perspective.
And you gave a secret away, because you've mentioned it a few times. You kept on saying YouTube and YouTube. And I know we're going to talk about publishing your content later in this conversation, but I, do people know that the secret is to put this on YouTube, that YouTube is Google and that's the biggest pond to swim in, and you want to be there, and that's really important. So start there and work your way out rather than work your way in.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, or work your way backwards to your website, right? So, but we'll come back to that. I wanted to talk though this evolution of, because I'm old enough to have been in the marketing business to remember when, if you wanted a corporate video made, you would have to hire a crew. It would be really expensive. It would be take a long time. And that was sometimes cost prohibitive for, say, a small business. And then fast forward to the era of the mobile phone, and now everyone's got a high def phone or camera in their pocket, and they can just take it out at any time and create a video. Does They might not have the skill to do that, but they have the ability to do it, just technologically. So now we're in the space where there's this range that still exists where you can still hire a crew and get it very well done, very high production quality. You could also shoot a 30-second video and post it within an additional 30 seconds and get it up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, or whatever. So there's this balance that we have to I think find between volume, where you can just crank out the videos, and value, which is the impact that a video is going to have. So is there a methodology, Alan, for when you work with a client to say, what's the best approach here? Should we invest $50,000 in one great video and have it forever? Or should we invest $1,000 in 50 videos and just get them out there and spray and pray? How do you approach that calculus with a client?
Sure. I would say it's usually a reflection of how expensive the product is, right? If it's a house, or if it's a car, or if it's a large item that needs a lot of attention to be shown, obviously you're only going to get so much scale for your time, right? Um, but it also is the creative idea and how that creative idea works with the brand. And with what you do, Tom, and with what you do, Curtis, it all is that ecosystem of what's going to get people interested in what you're selling. And if that's 10 videos to explain your product, if that's one video to do a deep dive 2-minute tutorial on whatever your product is, it's going to vary based on your business and what you need. It would be great if everybody had the budgets to always do the biggest and best things. But I think if you have that conversation with the client and kind of as a connector, kind of work between the lines of the Toms and the Curtises and be that gray area and help them see both the benefit technically from it and the need for it creatively for it. There's always a middle ground.
Hey, Curtis, what does aside from what you already shared, is there data that backs up or that you would use to guide somebody and say, this is a video that's going to have a very short lifespan, but maybe we could get wide reach. And so maybe we don't, break the bank on it, or something that's going to be a permanent asset that we're going to fix to a homepage, say, that we want everybody to see from now for the next 24 months. Do you look at data? Or do you look at website design? What sort of guides you in terms of knowing what sort of video assets you might need, whether it's on a website or a marketing campaign?
Yeah, so I do think similar to Alan's response there, it comes down to the goals of the organization. What are they trying to do? Selling a product, generating a lead, and where maybe are they stuck in telling that unique story about the brand or their unique value proposition to consumers who are visiting them. One of the areas that we've seen most successful recently has been in creating video content to use on YouTube in remarketing campaigns. So remarketing still is probably the cheapest of any campaigns that you can run on Google. Oftentimes we have customers that are paying, we've talked about this before, maybe $50 a click to get somebody to their website. But to think that that one touch point that consumer is going to convert on, you're lucky if you have a 2 to 5, maybe 7% conversion rate. But if you've done the nurturing or post bringing that person in, you can do the nurturing. Video is a really good way to do that because we can get eyeballs of people who have been on your website viewing video content, a 15-second, 30-second video clip, say on YouTube, for like 2 cents a view, 3 cents a view at the most. So now it becomes really inexpensive to communicate the value of the brand to a target audience that's very targeted, again, because they're people who have come to the website. And we can segment that audience so we're not getting maybe everybody that's been there. We want to get only users who are there for at least the average amount of time, right? The actual engaged users who are engaging with the website but didn't convert. Let's remarket to them. So that's been very effective. And I'll add to say that like we've been successful in doing this in both like larger production where clients have spent a budget to have a film crew come out, do a day of filming. There's a lot of cost that's associated with that. But we've had clients who have assets, but those assets were created maybe a few years ago, but their messaging has changed. That we could take assets and get that rescripted, recreated. That can be pretty inexpensive, even if you just have photos.
Right.
It doesn't have to be raw video content. That you could get a video created simply from photos.
Right. And it comes down to the usage too. If you publish your content right, that piece of content is evergreen and in perpetuity. So, what is the value of a really good marketing asset for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Because if it's done right, and depending on how much the product changes and how many rebrands you have and how many pivots in business you have, you could absolutely get somewhere between 5 and 8 years out of a really strong asset. And if your brand is strong at that point, to have an archival is only behooves you. Look at the old brands; they still go to their archival footage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just to put that to numbers, my average client probably spends, let's say, $3,500 a month in Google Ads. And let's just say you invested $10,000 to $12,000 into a couple videos, some 30s, which shouldn't be unreasonable to get, some filming and a couple 30 seconds. Like in Google Ads, I'm through that $10,000, $12,000 budget in 2-3 months. But what you just said in that video, living in perpetuity, you could take that as same investment and have a commercial you could use for the next 5 years easily. Right. So sometimes it's just putting into perspective that they see that big number and it's like, oh, wow, I don't know if I can do that. But actually, when I crunch the numbers, I'm like, that's a really good investment. The other big number that we have in this, and I think we'll have a future episode talking about Performance Max campaigns. So Performance Max, Google combined all their different ad types into one campaign: search, display, and video. It's very AI driven, very much algorithm driven. In almost every case, specifically with lead gen type campaigns, when we've done Performance Max and inserted a commercial to do remarketing and allow Google to go out and either do remarketing or find users who are in the target audience who haven't experienced the brand yet, those Performance Max campaigns are far outperforming everything else. Far outperforming. So where we've taken cost per acquisition numbers, like good numbers at like $130, $120 cost per acquisition, down to $30 to $40. So, I mean, wow. It just shows the power potentially in the video. Unfortunately, Google's not giving us the data in the Performance Max campaigns to really know how effective that video is. But I have no doubt that it's definitely assisting in the performance of those campaigns and what we're doing.
Right, and you can really understand your customer from ads are placed in front of them, what they're resonating, what's resonating with them. You can definitely do an A and a B creative very simply. You can put multiple phone numbers or information on the ad to really see where people are coming from in that respect as well.
Yeah.
Alan, do you think through when you're approaching a new video project, there's this whole life cycle from pre-planning to production to ultimately publishing and then even beyond that. Are you thinking through that entire life cycle from the very beginning or do you take it in phases? Like what's the smart approach to do some of the analysis that Curtis just talked about from a data standpoint, which is how are we going to use this? What's it going to cost us? What's the return going to be? How's it going to help us in our marketing
Absolutely.
efforts?
I guess the easiest thing to say is working backwards, right? Where is this piece of content playing? What are we making this piece of content for? Where is it going to be seen? So, where publishing comes last, because that's where you put your ad live or put your content live, you need to know where that's going to be. If it's Facebook exclusive, if it's Instagram and Facebook both, is it, hopefully YouTube? Do you need to change anything for the various platforms? So I think when you make your planning and do your pre-production work, you really have to have an idea of the publishing and where it's going for that process. So um, understanding the publishing, working backwards. Now you're pre-planning and you've hopefully made a good plan, and then you throw the dice across the table and you do your production, right? And you hope that no one gets too messy, and then you finish that day, which is or days, right? And those are the most costly days. Those are the most pressure days. And then you have time to shape it and finesse that content. And if you planned it well and the production went well, you don't have too much to do in the edit in that respect. You've really thought about what you were gonna make, and you've made it, and you just need to kind of simply follow the Lego put it together pages. And then from there, obviously the daisy chain goes to publishing and how are people going to see this and where are they going to see this. And then we get into, I guess, the next step, which is the analytics, which Curtis obviously knows a lot about. But to have the successful analytics, everything links itself back to that planning, that pre-production, that understanding of the platform and the audience in that platform.
What can you do from an analytics standpoint if let's pretend, I know this never happens to you, but let's pretend somebody's video asset is underperforming. So what are some of the things that you could do that don't require Alan to start all over, replan, hire a crew, do another shoot, what are some of the things that you could tweak along the margins to say, well, maybe it's not the video, maybe it's something else?
Yeah, a few things from a website perspective. If people are viewing it on the website, we could look at heat maps or even click tracking to see if people are actually watching the video. I mean, one quick thing to see just if people aren't clicking and watching it is, do we have a good cover image, a good thumbnail? Like, is it a thumbnail that makes somebody want to click and watch the video, or is it just some random, still of the video? So that's something that you want to make sure as part of the production is, depending on how we're going to use it, even if you're going to use it in YouTube and it's going to be in the feed, do we have a good thumbnail? If it's just part of an ad, you don't need a thumbnail. If we're just running this as a 30-second sort of bumper ad, or it's 30 seconds on TV, you certainly don't need that thumbnail because it's going to autoplay. Somebody's not clicking to play. When it comes to actual playtime, we want to look at the analytics, which we can in Google Analytics if it's on a website, or inside of YouTube, we can look at how long people are watching the video. And so that's something to pay attention to see if your message maybe at the start isn't resonating. Say, okay, we've developed 4 videos here and everybody's dropping off after 30 seconds. What could we do to do an edit to maybe increase their view time and keep them on a little bit longer. I think one thing I'd like to experiment with our podcast is to, instead of starting with our intro video, which we do, and that's I think 50 seconds is how long our intro video is, to actually put maybe a minute of our conversation,
Up front.
then do the intro, and then the rest of the podcast. So it's going to repeat whatever that first 60 seconds was, but that is a purposeful hook that in that first 60 seconds, I've grabbed the attention of somebody who's in my target audience, who's interested in the topic we're covering, who then says, yeah, I want to invest in this. So again, just some things it's data points to look at there that you could go back and revise and do a test. Say, hey, that change, did it work or not?
Yeah, I like that idea that, everything, is just a small change can make a big difference, right? And, uh, I know the idea that you guys talked about in your last episode of being consistent with the content you make and how important that is. This is similar to that idea of consistency, right? This is another form of that. And I'd also like to mention also, as you're talking about publishing, Curtis, even if you're not doing an ad and you're just doing a channel or it's just organic, uh, Google, YouTube is aware of how long and how good your titling is of your content and how good of a tags you have associated with it. Obviously, you mentioned the thumbnail. It's like Olympic figure skating judging, right? Like the smallest little things are little marks that get you up higher and higher. And so there's a checklist of a variety of things that Google, YouTube really likes for you to do in your publishing, in your posting of your videos to, help with that organic boost where, you don't have to spend that money in ad space if you didn't want to.
All right. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the value of video or the value of anything that's in real time or shows the personal side of the brand, I wanted to quote the great philosopher Woody Allen, who said 80% of success is showing up. And I was sitting in on a talk recently, and it really resonated with me. The point that was being made was that in this era of deep fakes, chat GPT, writing articles, all this AI generated content out there. As people are trying to get their own views, opinions, pitches, and out that sort of thing into the universe, you're competing now with a lot of what I would consider fake content, not fake news, but fake content that has no human side to it. Video allows you to literally show up, that 80% of success that Woody Allen was talking about. Something like this, even if you're just listening to a podcast, people can actually hear Alan Borman wax intelligently about video or Curtis on analytics. And you can demonstrate expertise via video and via live audio or even recorded audio in a way that maybe you won't be able to as easily with the written word, because there's always this in the back of your mind. I think more and more people are going to be questioning, did Tom write that? Did Alan write that? Or did some chatbot write it? So what are you seeing, Alan, in terms of video, where going back to the question I asked at the beginning, where you could just grab a cell phone and you could videotape yourself and put it on LinkedIn? Are you seeing more applications for video that just are you're using video to either humanize a brand or establish the human presence of the subject matter expert
Yeah,
on
well, I'll
camera?
say this much. Live is very important to people, right? Like that high speed chase, that, moment of national live broadcast news, that is beyond water cooler talk. So those moments are usually negative, but when they're positive, they're great. But those are huge moments of being live, if you will, and moreover, it's authentic, right? Like that's what live is. And yeah, there's obviously AI that helps you along the way. Obviously, some of the generated stuff isn't great. Some professionals are very easy to point out that something's not real or made real. Um, I guess as technology improves, we'll see how the technology improves the quality and the fake, if you will. But there is no replacing authenticity. There is no replacing that human connection in most everything that's made for humans.
Yep. Curtis, do you have any thoughts on that
Well,
topic
I
as well?
did hear listening to Joe Rogan recently. He had this guy, this Boneyard is the guest who he had on. This fascinating gentleman who's a gold miner in Alaska. And it's the second time he's had him on, but he has this basically pit that he's found full of ancient bones, woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. But this was found like 100 years ago. Nobody knew about it. And the Smithsonian has had bones that this company has given. Now, he's not 100 years old. He's purchased the company, but this pit he has, it just literally keeps turning up bones. He keeps digging more bones.
Wow.
It's insane. Some that are over 20,000 years old. It's almost like a burial ground because it's only, I think, 3 miles square that he's been digging, and they're all like right in this one central spot. But in any way, he's on his second podcast with Joe and says that, hey, someday, Joe, you and I won't be here. It's going to be AI having this conversation for us. And Joe disagreed. He just, there's nothing that's going to replace that authenticity and that connection that people want to have. And I think the maybe anticipation or sort of rawness that happens in a conversation, which is maybe why people are drawn into live, because it's like, what might happen? There's
Right.
maybe nothing exciting that's going to happen between, the three of our conversations, but the three of us, we'll see. But that's what drew my daughter and I into watching the weather stream that I mentioned earlier, right? Like there's chasers that are chasing and they're streaming their live video from their cars, and Ryan Hall, he's got a whole dashboard up. So he's got the radar, he's got the chasers video, he's on Twitter, he's sharing photos. And you're immersed into what's happening almost as if you're there. And I think that immersement into it is really cool. And then it's all documented. So my daughter's doing research on a tornado that happened in Kentucky a couple years ago, and she went back to a Ryan Hall Y'all broadcast, which is saved on YouTube, and watched that 3-hour broadcast, this like 300-mile tornado that happened. And, that was all live, documented what happened basically. And she was able to consume all that content versus going to Wikipedia and reading about what happened. Right. It was way more informational and way more interesting. So, I think video's here to stay. I think as with the invent of ChatGPT and a lot of content that's being written that you can't discern if somebody wrote it or if a chatbot wrote it, that this human video, listening to a podcast, watching people, whether it's live or not, I think people are going to stay interested in that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Another way to kind of look at what Joe Rogan said about, will robots, let's say, replace somebody like a Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan is so unique. I don't know that if you're going to design a podcast host in a laboratory, it would look
Right.
anything like Joe Rogan.
Totally.
But there's something about Joe Rogan that attracts literally millions of people. Howard
Yep.
Stern's the same way. You could say anyone who's made a name for themselves, it's because of their personality, which, okay, you don't need to be Joe Rogan. But the point that we're making is a medium like video, and to a lesser degree podcast audio, allows your personality to come out for better or for worse, and it's going to attract the right type of people. It's more immersive, it's more naked, it's more authentic, and that's what we're advocating for at the end of the day, is to not stop writing articles, because there's a whole other argument of why that's a effective thought leadership platform. But to bring this all full circle, Alan, we'll let you have the last word on this notion of authenticity, because there's nothing It's not like I have a
Right.
face for video, right? I have a face
Right.
for podcasting, but here I am because I want people to know that this is really a conversation that the three of us had. It's authentic, and hopefully people will get something
It's
out of it.
AI is the ultimate time capsule. It's the fountain of youth, right? If you can, this moment, this podcast will always have this moment in time, and we'll be forever young in this podcast, right? And the idea that AI going forward is a fountain of youth. If you give it your data and you give it your information and you give it, how you speak and how you talk, and it will eventually learn better or as good as you learn to be you, right? Like that is the hope for some people going forward. Our meat suits are going to expire one day, and we can all live on in some capacity, uh, but we do need someone to I guess go to the light and flick it on and say, we need you here. You're on, you're off, you're on, you're off. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing future. That's really what I would have to say to sum it up. Is the possibilities are endless, and uh, I'm glad we're talking because that good ideas come from that.
Well, I don't like Alan just to share maybe a couple projects he's worked on. I don't know if there's a place people could follow, but I know you did a car documentary recently. You've worked on some pretty significant projects in the past. But if somebody's interested in finding some of your work, where could they find some of that, Alan?
Yeah, I have my website, alanborman.com. I'm always interested in a variety of productions. I was fortunate enough to freelance with an ad agency, and we came up with a really cool project at the end of last year called for MoonPie called Customer Acquisition. We tried to acquire aliens as customers. It's a really wild documentary that we shot about trying to communicate to aliens how they should be eating moon pies or buying moon pies, using moon pies in the galactic uh, capitalism that they live in. So that was a really fun project. And varieties of projects in and around town. I've been lucky enough to work on some small business projects that recently and locally that they give you a different sense of accomplishment than some of the larger big agency work, if you will. So it's been a great time, and I've been loving working on this podcast because I get to learn so much.
Awesome. Well, we will link to all of that. Is that all on your website, alanborman.com, all of the projects you mentioned?
Yeah, where to find me. I'm not one to be under the radar or off the grid.
Well, we're thankful for that because not only do you help us on the podcast, you help us produce the podcast. So thank you very much, Alan, for being here. We will post everything available to all in the show notes. And until next time, Curtis, we'll see you on the next Bullhorns in Bullseyes.